Hi, this is Andrew. I was just thinking about today, whilst walking along the beach, about how we can condition our happiness, our sense of joy, peace in our lives, just by how we think and how we think we feel we should have certain things in our lives to feel a certain way or not feel a certain way. And I think everybody can pretty much relate to this in some way, whether they've got mental health problems or not. And it varies in degree, in a way. So, for instance, a lot of the time people feel that they can't obtain a certain level of happiness or joy or contentment because they feel that they need to have this thing or that thing to be in their lives, or sometimes not in their lives. I need this thing to be removed from my life somehow to find that sense of joy and happiness. Now, that could be a very simple thing. That could be just a material thing. It could be I wanted this, I don't know, type of car or phone or something like that, and it's financially out of reach to some degree for you, and you convince yourself that you need to have this thing as part of your conditions to be happy, uh, well, you're always going to be wanting for this sense of happiness until that condition is met. So the way really around this sort of thing is just to let go of that condition completely, to say that, well, maybe it's nice to have these things, but I'm not going to let that thing or lack of it having it to affect me in any way whatsoever. So we're finding that within inside ourselves, that sense of peace and joy and happiness, which is where it always comes from anyway. It's just that we're often fooled into thinking that things coming in and out of our lives is what is the real condition of our joy and happiness, but it's only really the perception of how we're looking at things and what sort of we're put onto things to say that is the thing that gives me that sense of joy and happiness, whether it be a relationship or person in some way, or a pet or anything like that. That's not to say those things can't bring us a sense of joy and happiness, but the problem is when those things aren't there. We've set up a condition to say, well, that condition is no longer being met, therefore I do not cannot have the same sense of contentment, joy, happiness, whatever you want to define that. Now, in terms of mental health, it can be somewhat. It's not different. It's a little bit more challenging because there are some conditions there that do need to be dealt with, often, so we can feel that sense of peace and joy. So, example would be that most people have an aspect of trauma in their lives to some degree, and it varies quite dramatically on the extent of that. But that's a personal thing anyway. What one person feels is a big problem, is traumatic in their lives, may not be that at all for another person. So it's individualized and how that affects us in our lives. So the condition in that regard about our happiness is we need to unravel all of these thoughts. So if anyone ever spends any time in really paying attention to what you're thinking about, and meditation is a great tool for this, just to watch what you're thinking about, it's really interesting the sort of things you're telling yourself, the sort of loops that are going around and around, and they are just loops. That's exactly what they are. They keep going around and around and around, these thoughts and ideas and perceptions and beliefs and memories. All these things keep going around and around. So really what we need to do, those things are a block. They are a condition in a sense to our joy and happiness. So we do need to remove those things. And sometimes it's not as easy as just letting go of an attachment to buying an object like a car or a phone. Sometimes it requires some work uh, to put things in such a way, a perspective, that we look at things differently or rightly in a way that they don't affect us anymore. They're no longer a condition to the fulfillment, joy, and happiness that we deserve. And that does require often self-reflection, and that's one aspect of it. But the perception or the perspective is really a really important part of all parts of life anyway. That all that ever really happens in life is an event, and then how we take that upon ourselves and how we interpret that, see that within our lives, is how we then experience not just the event, but if it's traumatic, how then we experience life. So, something I've noticed with people over time, because we're never really taught these things, that when things don't go right in life, so to speak, and perhaps it's not uncommon for things to be somewhat very unjustified. There's some really good people out there who do good things, and yet a lot of things happen to them in life that aren't particularly fair, and a lot of unkindness from others, despite the fact they've been very kind, and then that can lead to a level of anger and bitterness within ourselves if that's happening to us, or we see that sometimes in other people, and that's totally understandable. I mean, we're only human, and we can only take so much a lot of the time before we perhaps change a bit within ourselves from all the things going on external to ourselves. Again, it's really what's going on inside ourselves, and it's not easy at times, particularly when you've been going through it quite a lot for a long time. I know I've experienced some things, and I've noticed how that they brought me down at times, and I wouldn't say I was in a deep, full-blown depression or anything like that, but it's been, some very heavy times, even after I got better. I was like, wow, just my sense of joy wasn't at its peak, and I struggled sometimes to really feel that. But again, that was just my own processing and going through things. And another thing too that I discovered too was sometimes we just need to just accept what's happening in life to a degree. And I'm not saying we don't do things. Like, an example would be you're in a condition. Well, I mean, I could talk from personal experience here where I've had to live out of my car quite a lot, my four-wheel drive, whether it's something I wanted to do or had no choice to do so because of, the lack of accommodation around or the pricing or whatever it is. And it hasn't always felt good. And, thought of when I've had times of staying in a place and then thinking I have to go back to living that way again, it's brought on a sense of, we'll call it like maybe a sense of like minor anxiety to some degree, like, oh no, I don't really want to go through all that again. Oh, I remember how it felt. And then resisting it, but thinking, well, if that is going to happen again, for instance, as an example, and I'm doing all my best to, find somewhere else or whatever it is to live in a house again or whatever it is, and that's not coming about, for instance, well, resisting it is not changing it either. All it's doing is make me feel worse. I'm fearful about this thing that may happen, even if it is inevitable. It's like, well, being afraid of it is not going to change it, especially if I know it's going to happen, for instance. But even then, sometimes, quite miraculous things can happen at the last minute, so to speak. That's happened before too. But I'm just saying that when things sometimes we don't have, a lot of things we don't have control over. All we have control over is how we look at it and our perception. So if I just embrace it rather than trying to resist it, say, okay, well, this is going to happen. Well, what can I do to prepare myself mentally? Or, what is it I'm actually fearing altogether? Is it, in this context, it was often a lack of comfort. It was very challenging during some of the conditions, weather-wise, and to go through. But without getting into detail with that, it was when I started to look at those things, it was like, okay, well, that's the thing I'm not looking forward to. Well, maybe I can do the best I can to, get myself prepared to take on, that sort of discomfort again. But even then, maybe not look at it that way. Look at it differently, like it's an experience for what it is, which is generally what I try and do. It's not always easy to do when we're under pressure and things. This is again why meditation is such a useful thing. It really helps to balance things out a lot better, make things a lot easier to manage and deal with throughout the day, particularly during challenging times. It's probably when you should be meditating the most, when you feel like it least, and when you feel like you've probably got least amount of time for it. It's a funny thing like that. So it just helps things a lot easier during those challenging times. So anyway, what I'm getting at here is that all I could really do is change my thinking about it, how I looked at it, my perception, different way of looking at it, and in a sense embracing just what's happening anyway. It's like, well, if I can't change it, I'll embrace the situation and whatever's within it. But it's really hard to get over that sometimes. We get really caught up in life with a lot of our own thinking and beliefs, and again, going back to that thing I was saying, these loops, these circles and cycles within our own mind of our thoughts. So what we really need to do is change our perception. We need to change, in a sense, ourselves, the current version of ourselves is thinking this way. Well, we need to change that. If your mind keeps going back to certain memories, now I'm not saying stuff anything down. Like, you should always, experience whatever it is you're feeling. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a very normal and probably healthy thing to do. But it's when it gets too out of whack and it really starts to impact our lives dramatically in many different ways that we just become frozen in our own lives, well, then we've got some problems there. And we can fix that. It's not that we can't, but it's not an uncommon thing for us to get stuck there, particularly when we're going through a lot mentally, mentally, emotionally. Whether it's physically things are happening to us, it's generally still going to play on the mental and emotional level. So we need to sometimes work on things too. We can't run away from what's going on with us. Sometimes challenging things can be for people to admit to themselves that perhaps their perception of other people was wrong. Perhaps they've been wrong. Perhaps I've been wrong about things. That's not always an easy thing to admit to ourselves that we've been wrong in our perception on things or our choices. But then again, you never really make a wrong choice because you always learn from it anyway, don't you? So, most of the time what we're doing in life is trying to find a certain level of comfort in our lives. And that's not always easy to do. And it's not saying that we shouldn't still strive towards certain things, but really the material thing is not really even a first primary thing. It's maybe not even a secondary thing in some ways, but I'm not saying I'm not an anti-materialist. I think it's great that everybody should eat well and have a certain level of comfort in their lives, without a doubt. But what I'm getting at is sometimes we don't have a lot of control on that for whatever reason. What's happening in the world right now, there's a lot of people who don't have work, or they certainly don't have a house. I've met a lot of people on my journeys who are homeless, families and all sorts, great people, qualified people, whatever it is. And they're going through this sort of thing themselves, I suppose, and I know how challenging that must be for them, and especially with children. But all they really got control over a lot of the time, despite their best efforts, was really how they looked at life each day in their perspective and how they keep themselves balanced. And that really is an important part, because if we're not balanced with inside ourselves, well, we're just going to be thrown off in every direction. Whatever happens, a new thing happens, comes, oh no, it just brings you down, and you can really feel really beaten down by life when that happens. But if we didn't feel like we're fighting life, and we're not trying to grasp on and hold on to things that we think are going to keep us happy, when sometimes trying to hold on and grasp those things that are going anyway, and that can make us even less happy, less happy, should I say, because we're holding on to something that we can't hold on to anyway, whether that be things, a place, people, whatever it is. And that's not always an easy thing to acknowledge and accept. However, that's just sometimes part of life, and it's not an easy lesson at times. But as time goes on, at least I can talk about from my own perspective, that I've gone through some pretty challenging things where I've had to let all sorts of things go. Possessions, and including a lot of sentimental things. I've had to have bonfires and literally burn my things. So I had nowhere else to put them, nobody to take them. Couldn't take them to the tip, which is in Australia. That's like, I don't know what they call it in other countries, but your big garbage centres basically. And those things weren't open a lot of the time during the whole COVID thing, and so I just had to burn. I think I had 13 bonfires. Just watched everything that's going up, and that was a really interesting level of non-detachment. Sorry, non-attachment, not non-detachment, non-attachment. And it's no different to letting go of our thoughts, sometimes our memories even. And I'm not talking about just trying to block things out. That's not the healthy way. What I'm getting at is realizing how you're thinking, and thinking, well, this is not serving me anymore. Yes, there is a process a lot of the time with grief, and we can grieve people leaving our lives, not even just in terms of them transitioning from their bodies, like in terms of death, but we get falling outs with people that we really cared about. Something happened and it's perhaps not fixable, and that there's a process with that too, and there's realizations we need to make in that, and that can be a long process sometimes. Okay, and some days we think we're all good, and then a few days later we find, wow, I can't believe I feel this bad, about the situation or whatever it is. There's a process to that for sure. But the thing when we start to realize what we are thinking, feeling, and looking at, and putting our attention on, we will notice, and you will notice too, that we're actually doing this to ourselves through our own thoughts. It's our own thoughts, and then we have an emotional aspect to that too. So if you're not feeling like a sense of joy and happiness in your life, it's good to ask yourself why not. Why is that? What is the problem? What is the conditions? What's holding you back from feeling that? I know I notice every day when I'm out and about, I see people, and I'm generally very cheerful and happy with people and try to talk to people as much as I can. But, I've noticed a lot lately that it's not really reciprocated. People aren't seeming that happy. It doesn't matter if it's the same people I talk to every day for weeks on end. They never really seem to open up or lighten up. And I can see it in their face, in their eyes, on their face, in their eyes. That's this sense of unhappiness. For whatever reason, I mean, I love talking to people if they want to open up and share. I love to share what I can with others to help them, perhaps change their perspective, I suppose, that's keeping them back. I said I'm not taking away from the traumatic aspects. Things need to be worked through, whether we do it by ourselves or with someone who can guide us through our own stuff. A therapist of some kind, or a coach, life coach, or anything along those lines. But if I was able to ask these people that I see, how happy are you on a scale of 1 to 10? How joyful are you in your life? 10 being the greatest. I really wonder what that number would be. I mean, you can ask yourself this question: what would that number be? How happy are you? How joyful? How content with life are you out of 10? And if it's it doesn't really matter what number it is, but let's say it's a 6. Well, okay, what do you need to do to get it to a 10? What's missing? And it's interesting, ask yourself what's missing, because you'll find that that's most likely a condition that you're saying needs to be met before you can feel this thing. And that's what I'm telling you, that that's not true. That we don't need things or things to be taken away from us so much. Although I do think it's a good idea if we find a lot of toxicity in our lives, well, that's likely a good thing to remove that from our lives. Again, that's becoming aware, because sometimes that can be challenging if something keeps triggering you over and over again and it's not good for you. Well, sometimes we've just got to walk away from a person or a situation. And that is a condition to our happiness. And that's somewhat different, letting things go in that regard, for sure, the toxicity. But also, as I said, there's two sides to it: what we let go of and also what we realise we didn't really need to begin with. So if you're asking yourself this out of 1 to 10, what do I need to get to a 10 if I'm not at that point? Well, it's a good thing to reflect upon. What are the different areas? How do you want to actually feel, and what is blocking you from feeling that way? Most people do want to feel a sense of joy and happiness. And again, it's something that is possible, and the fact that I think everybody wants it to some degree, then it must be possible. The fact that we even want it to begin with. And that's why it is really good to reflect on what is holding me back from my joy, what is holding me back from my happiness. I sometimes have to do this for myself at times too, if I'm not feeling at a 10. And I mean, it's some pretty simple things sometimes. It's not always a very complicated thing. It could be as simple as sometimes food. Sometimes eating certain food can make us feel a certain way, play with our moods, and coffee can be a really big one for a lot of people. The caffeine. I mean, we find that in tea as well, but sometimes that can be a really big thing on people's how they feel in life. They can conjure up a lot of anxiety or anger or sugar. Bring the mood right up and drop you right back down again. And that's just very simple stuff. But really what I'm trying to just introduce to you here is, what are the conditions of your happiness to getting to a 10? To even working towards it. What is it? And what can you do about it? Do what you can. And if you can't do that, then there's nothing you can do to change the condition in some way to remove it, or to get the thing you want. In a sense, let's say it's a job, for instance, and you're feeling, well, I really need this thing to feel a certain way. And I'm not saying don't do that, but if you're doing your very best and still not getting that, I know it's a challenging thing, because it can make you feel really down when you're not feeling. Sometimes it can be a sense of worth, from not having a job or whatever. Well, then again, it's a changing of a perspective on that to say, well, I would like to have this thing, but despite it, I choose to feel joy. I choose to feel happiness despite what's going on around me, outside of me. I'd like certain things to be met. I'd like certain conditions. I may work towards those in some capacity, but despite the results, I choose to be happy. Because most of the time we are conditioning our happiness on the results. How are we going to feel based on whether we acquire this thing or remove this condition? So I know I keep going on about it again and again. I was trying to get that into you, that it's interesting how much we condition our lives, how we feel in our lives by what's going on outside of ourselves. And this is why it's so important for us to start the day. In whatever way you choose, I find meditation is a really, really good start to the day, is to get ourselves into that stillness, to become really balanced with inside ourselves the best that we can, to really condition our minds ready for the day ahead. And I'll maybe go into that in detail, how I do that myself in different ways, maybe in another video. But I really just want you today to really think about that for yourself, about what is it I need to do to get to a 10 out of 10 in terms of my joy and happiness. It doesn't mean you'll achieve it today, but just becoming aware of the things that are blocking and realize that you're doing that to yourself. That's the thing, that you may say, I need this condition to be met, but you don't. You're telling yourself that. It's not true. You can find whatever feeling you want to feel and experience in life within inside yourself. I mean, really, that's all we're ever really wanting anyway. The reason we choose to do a lot of things in life, we say we want this thing or that thing, is because of how we think it's going to make us feel. So you're only ever really going for the feeling anyway. So you can remove the things that are making you feel the way you don't want to feel, and or remove the conditions to say, I need this thing to feel a certain way, and realize that you can do that inside yourself at any point, at any time throughout the day. And it's true. I mean, I do this daily. You can just close your eyes, and I like to just put my hand here. I like to put my hand just sometimes over my heart area, it's about here somewhere, and I just close my eyes, and I like to just feel into my heart and try and feel a sense of love. Whether it's the feeling of, if you remember how it feels like to be in love, just really focus on that. I want to feel this, and I want to feel it in every cell of my body. I want to feel this joy in every cell of my body to uplift me. And imagine what sense of joy would be. It would be uplifting, wouldn't it? You feel all your senses going upwards, all your cells moving upwards. And you sit there with that, just feeling, I'm just going to sit here and think what it would feel like to feel a sense of joy or bliss or happiness or whatever positive, wonderful emotion you like to feel, love. Whatever one you can do and feels right for you. If you want to think about someone or something that helps you elevate that feeling, then you should do that. So that's what you're going, you're wanting to do is to feel that sense and focus in on that. And as I was saying, it doesn't matter what the emotion is, you can give it to yourself. It's like when people fall in love and they think, wow, this person, they make me feel this way. Almost like they're giving you something, like they're giving you this love to feel. But the truth is they're not doing that. They're only drawing forth what was already within inside yourself. You already feel this love is already within you. So that's why we often think this is the thing or the person who gave me that love. And you did share that with them and perhaps created this different, a love between you and things like that. What I'm getting at, though, is that sense of what you felt inside you was happening inside of you. All right? It's happening inside of you. And that person, that pet, whatever it is, that just drew forth what was already within you. And what I'm saying is you don't actually even need that external thing. You can close your eyes and focus in on that. And I recommend you do this daily. There actually are benefits to doing this in a biological, physiological way too. So it helps with your immune system and does a lot of other things with coherence between your heart and the brain. So I say this is a great practice to do daily. Try and do it. I mean, at least 3 minutes. Just try and sit there and feel emotion. But the longer you do it, the better, because you'll get better at it, and you'll be able to feel the emotions you want to feel whenever you want to. And if you do this, as I guess I was talking in this video with in terms of conditions, but if you realize that that's really what you're after anyway, is to feel a certain way, just go for that. Go for that, and you don't need to be waiting for things outside of yourself to change, to something to come in or leave your life. You say, I choose to feel this way, and I'm going to focus on that feeling, and I want to feel it. I want to feel it, I want to experience it throughout my day, and I want to share it with others. That's what I'm about. And I said, not to say we shouldn't do things in life, still keep going ahead and looking at things, but it's always about ourselves in the sense, and I don't mean that in a selfish way, but we've got to make sure that we take care of our own bodies, minds, spirit, soul, whatever you want to use in that way, in the spiritual sense. This is important that we do this for ourselves, because if we don't take care of our own selves, it's very hard to contend with the day and be in a higher aspect of mind and feeling, particularly dealing with challenges in the day. But the more we do this, the more we have that to share with others. And that's certainly one thing I've noticed in this world, is that there's certainly not enough joy and love being shared each day. Even just smiling at people. It's just interesting everywhere you go, just how much unhappiness there is. You can just feel it, sense it. Even when you talk to people, you can just tell. And so it's important for us to do that for ourselves, but also, therefore, as I said, we get to share that with others as well. Anyway, I'm going to leave the video here. Please leave any comments below if there's anything you'd like to share with yourself, or comment on this video in any way. And also a reminder that I do one-on-one coaching sessions, whether it's obviously with the bipolar aspect, which I've talked about, I overcame myself, but any area to with anxiety, depression, or improving your life in any way. So I'll leave this here, all the details in the comments, in the description below. So I wish you all a wonderful day or night wherever you are. I look forward to making another video.